My purpose is to be love in skin, to love you regardless of the behaviors, and to encourage you to be your light. Welcome back, Celebration in the Band, baby. Woo! Thank you. I heard they were a splash in Nashville. That's where they were. So welcome back. You were missed. And we had a beautiful Sunday, last Sunday, with Carissa belting out some beautiful tunes as well. Oh my gosh. Austin, Unity Church of the Hills. We got a lot going on here. Well, today we are going to be talking about self-love as spiritual praise. You know, in our society, we've been conditioned to believe that loving ourselves is selfish and ungodly. Oh, I just saw somebody come back. Hi. Sorry. And then we come to unity, and we discover that self-care and self-love are not only important, but vital to our spiritual growth. You know, when I first got to Unity, it was about over 30 years ago. Yeah, I'm dating myself. And the notion of self-love was really difficult for me to embrace. On one hand, how cool. You know, it's like, wow, people are celebrating themselves and just elevating who they are, the truth of who they are. And then on the other hand, I'm like, my paradigm was to be a good spiritual person, you had to sacrifice yourself for others, right? That was the conditioning of my family and my religion. You see, I came to Unity all those years ago, broken and lost. I hated the God of my understanding, yet I was yearning for connection. I hated religion, but my soul was needing renewal. I hated feeling so alone, while the divinity within me was reminding me I was living a lie of separation. And I was so filled with self-loathing at that time. I couldn't wrap my head around the idea of loving me. You see, because I was so focused on the mistakes I made in my life. You know, all those derailments that happened in my life, that I came to believe that I was the mistake. I was a derailment. How many of you had those thoughts and feelings before? Yeah, it's the human condition. And this is why we need spiritual community. We need spiritual community to remind us that each of us is a part of God, that we aren't broken, that we are beautifully made, that we are the treasures of the universe. Now, once I started Unity, there was one thing that I could hold on to. It was denials and affirmations. The rest of it was a little too woo-woo for me. Do you know what I'm saying, right? But denials and affirmations were solid. I could get around it. It was a formula. And you know, we humans, we love formulas, right? Give us a formula of how to succeed, and we are going to do that formula. And so for me, at the time, denials plus affirmations equaled a fabulous life. Got it. And I loved it because I could grasp that I could release these negative thoughts, these thoughts that were not of love. I could look at all those tapes that I internalized that made me feel less than and wrong, and I could refute their truth and power. It was a time of renewal and hope for me. And then I could create with affirmations, right? I could remind myself that I am beautifully made and God doesn't make junk, right? And then over time, I started to get this feeling of deserving, that I could have a wonderful life. And so what do you think is the next spiritual thing that I learned that I worked with. It was the law of attraction. That's usually kind of like the next thing that kind of opens up for us, right? The spiritual law of attraction. And so I had so much fun and energy creating green lights on my drive, the parking spaces that would be there just for me when I'm ready, right? And then I stretched a little bit more, and it was, okay, having a partner in my life, or acquiring some goal, right? So all of these, and those were kind of nice little stretches. But here's the tricky part. They're all basic spiritual principles. Did you hear me? Oh, she did say that. She says they were like basic. Yes, I did. They are basic. Think of them as second-year classes when you're at a four-year institution. Getting it? Do I still use them today? Yes. Yes, I do. But I don't use them the same way that I used to. You see, before, they were my lifeline. I held on. I used them constantly. That's all I had. Today, they are a hammer in my toolbox. Now I'm preaching. A hammer in my toolbox. What do I mean by that? I mean that in our toolboxes, right, we have hammers in our toolboxes. They are a basic blunt force tool. But if I'm doing a ceiling fan installation or changing the knobs on the light switches, I can't use a hammer for that, can I? So similarly, when we look at this spiritually, denials and affirmations, I use them, but I use them when I'm in a particularly hard-to-shift looping thought. Got it? You see, when our movement was starting, these concepts were revolutionary. And today, they are still useful and a solid tool for us to use. But the question is, are they your most precious tools? Or have you added to your toolbox? And here's the deep question. When you say you've been in unity and new thought for 5, 10, 20 years, do you mean you're doing the work to continually stretch your spiritual muscles, to evolve your consciousness? Or are you repeating the first year over and over again? Because there's a big difference there, my friends. So the reason I'm having this conversation with you is to be able to say that right sounding, we learn the right things to say, the unity things to say. And just because we know how to say them doesn't mean that spiritual transformation has happened. Transformation comes from us spiritually stretching our muscles, learning, evolving our consciousness, embodying the divine, being love in all we say and do. And that work takes more than a hammer. Can I get an amen on that? Amen. You see, knowing the truth of what we are and loving oneself doesn't come from a place of ego. It comes from the soul's knowing. Now, often the ego gets a bad rap, right? It's like we get spiritual and we're like, get rid of the ego, get rid of the ego. No, it's not about getting rid of the ego. It's about reclaiming it in a different way. You see, the ego is necessary for us to maneuver here, to navigate on this plane of existence. We need it. But the ego, like the mind, are to be used as tools, not as definitions of who we are. Got it? Ever have a conversation with somebody who knows it all? And they want you to know they know it all? What thoughts come to mind about that experience when you're engaging with them? And don't use any names. Shout out. What you got? What experiences come to mind? Frustration? Escape. Good. What else? Boredom. Condescending. Loss of energy. Yeah. What else? Good. Yeah. We have those feelings because we know on a cellular level that when we are clear in knowing the truth of what and who we are, that we're divinity in skin, we are love and loved, that we don't have to prove to anyone our worth. Correct? Conversely, ever talk to somebody who's a victim? They share how wrong they have been, right? How they have been wronged. And then someone, of course, has to be blamed. And when you engage with a person like this, once again, no names, what thoughts come to mind? What do you think of? Wear you out. Sadness? Sadness, yes. What else? Exhaustion, thank you. Yeah. All right. Because what do we know again? On a cellular level, right? On a cellular level, we know that in our truth, if we know who and what we are in divinity, as divinity in skin, that we are love and loved, then there's no need to prove to someone that we are lovable, right? So on either side of that equation, it boils down to self-love. Self-love. I love this book. This was one of my kind of first primers when I started doing my own awakening. And it is Love is the Answer, Creating Positive Relationships. And it's by Gerald Jampolsky and Diane Cirincione. And they say this about whether it's boasting or victimization. Our own unloving thoughts about ourselves hurt us. Once again, projection is a mirror and not a fact. We often choose relationships that are perfect reflections of the belief that we are not deserving of love. Then we mold and manipulate these relationships to match our inner perceptions. Sound familiar? I don't know about you, but how many times have you been in a relationship with the same person but different faces? Because I know I have, right? Thank you. Yes. So we're having this conversation, my friends, because I want you to have amazing lives and amazing relationships. And the only way that I know how to support you in this is to encourage you to stretch and grow. Why do you think we have at least 4 times a year different kinds of classes for you to take? Right? We offer these things to help you to learn, to stretch, to grow. Now, we're in the season of radical renewal, and as Reggie mentioned before, we are going to be working with nonviolent communication. And I just want to take a pause for a moment and say, if you've taken NVC, and you go, oh, I've taken that already, so I don't need to do that now. I'm telling you, this is a radical new class that's been developed by Sandra Vella, LUT candidate, almost complete by the end of the year, and the education team, which consists of Rick Busby, Linda Hancock, and Anita Farrell. It's experiential. It's going to be using some building blocks to give you practice on using it. Because having all of that knowledge up here, but then not being able to engage with someone in love and kindness, I don't know why take a class then, right? Okay, so the purpose of this is really for us to be able to engage with each other in new ways, in ways of respect, of love, of kindness, while taking responsibility for our own emotions. So we no longer have to use the phrase, "you made me feel mad," right? Because we're responsible for our emotions. The other aside that I want to give on this is that I expect every leader in this community to take this class. Every leader. So if you're on the board of directors, I expect you to take this class. If you're leading a committee, I expect you to take this class. If you're thinking about coming on the board of directors, I expect you to take this class. This is important work for us to be doing. And I also want you to hear this, because sometimes I hear people say to me, well, you think there's something wrong with us. And I'm like, no. I think that you're wonderful. I think that you're perfect. And I am here to support you in being the highest that you can, both emotionally and spiritually. That's my job. Do you hear the difference? Okay, thank you. Somebody said yes. And in order to be the embodiment of the divine, it's imperative that we love ourselves. It is imperative that we love ourselves. And once again, love ourselves not from ego, but love ourselves unconditionally from our divinity, right? We get a chance to start right now, today, to stop recreating the dramas in our lives. Because once we are filled up with unconditional love, it can't help but spill over on everyone and everything around us. That's the ripple effect. That's how we change lives. The problems come when we try to be loving and kind towards others, but we got nothing in the tank. We don't even love ourselves. How are we going to love somebody else? RuPaul in the house. Okay. But the question comes, how does this work? How does this work? How do we move from the societal definitions of what loving ourselves has meant, right, which is really ego stroking, let's call it what it is, to creating a practice of self-love from divinity? Self-love from divinity. Why do we care? Why do we want to do this work? Because self-love from our divine consciousness is spiritual praise. Did you hear that? It's spiritual praise. Now, according to the guides who wrote The Kingdom in Paul Selig's book, they start us on that path of discovery, and they say this: to comprehend the self in knowing does not displace the egoic structure. It actually reclaims it as of God and allows it to live in its own agreement that in some ways has been usurped by its higher being. What does that mean? When we start doing this spiritual work, our ego immediately goes into this sense of, I'm going to die, and I'm not going to die. And so it kicks up all of this resistance. And there's a lot of thoughts that happen with this, and it creates anxiety and dissonance within us. The ego wants to survive, but the ego doesn't have to die. The ego doesn't have to die. It's simply reclaimed by the divine into what it was always meant to be: a tool. A tool to support you in navigating this realm with easy shortcuts. This is how we make things new again. You following? So the guides remind us that our ego is of God. There is no thing that is not of God, right? We say that all the time. But our ego's been contaminated by our indoctrination on this planet because we believe in separation and division. And when we do that, we're claiming our shadow as opposed to our light. The guides also write this: all things are of God, all things, everything must be. The denial of the light is what claims you in shadow. The denial of the inherent divinity in anyone or anything puts it in shadow and calls you to its side. You live in a ruined kingdom thinking it's splendorous. When a ruin stands before you, know God as the ruin, and see the ruin remade in an articulated state of a degree that the small self, the ego, cannot imagine. Booyah. Powerful stuff. Loving all aspects of ourselves is crucial to loving God. There is no thing God is not. We say it over and over again. So you feel horrible because you lied or you judged someone. Give yourself the gift of compassion. Make amends. Make amends and reclaim your truth, right? The behavior isn't what and who you are. That's not your truth. You are beautifully made, divinity in skin. And then be loving to yourself as you honor the precious treasure that you truly are. Being loving to yourself means you are praising God. Being loving to yourself means you are praising God for the creation that you are. Being loving to yourself means that you will be overflowing in love and to others simply because you are so filled up. So I want to share a story with you that, you know what I did? I left it in my bag. Do you mind getting it for me? So I'm going to share a story with you in just a moment. But I'll come back to that one. Most of you got a card when you came in, a business card, and it talks about loving. And these are tips on how you can stay in loving consciousness with yourself, all right? So I want this to be in your wallet. Thank you, love. To be in your wallet, to be given out whenever you need it. So if you need another one, get it on the way out. Because there are tips, L-O-V-I-N-G, right? So let go of the past. Let go of the mistakes. Let go of the errors. Whatever happened in your past brought you here to this moment. Brought you here to this moment. Helped you to be the divine being that you are. Oh, open your heart to divinity. So even if you're having some difficulty with someone, you can choose to open your heart and see the divinity within them. Yes? Thank you. Visualize. Visualize yourself as the light of God. If you are the light of God and you see yourself walking as the light of God, oh my gosh, how much love are you generating, right? Unconditional love. Then imagine unlimited love flows in and overflows to everyone around you. And now is the time. Not what happened with X 6 months ago, not what could happen tomorrow or a week from now. Here, in this present moment, all is well. All is well. And then give love freely without reward. Simply because I love you doesn't mean that you have to love me back. It'd be nice, right? I'm not gonna lie, it'd be nice. But that's not my purpose. My purpose is to be love and skin, to love you regardless of the behaviors, and to encourage you to be your light. So I want to just read this quick story with you that this is by Alan Cohen, The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And it's about his experience with someone overflowing in love. One bright spring morning, I stepped outside the restaurant where I was working for a breath of fresh air and sunshine. And as I closed the door behind me, a man that I had not seen before approached me with a radiant smile and exclaimed, "Gosh, it's a beautiful day, isn't it?" Now, I know the rest of you are like cringing, right, when somebody comes up to you and says that. And he said, "It certainly is. You know, my friend," he went on, "I just want to tell you how happy I am since I allowed God into my life." Erks. How many of you are waiting for that track to come out? I was a little surprised that he spoke so intimately to me, and I was, in fact, a little leery that he was about to go into a sermon, or invite me to a meeting, or ask for a donation. But there was something genuine about him, so I loaned him my ear. "I used to be miserable," he said. "I had so many worries and poor health, my business was floundering, and I just did not like life. Then one day I realized how wonderful and magnificent is God. I saw, as if for the first time, the splendor of God's creation. God made the trees, the birds, and the flowers, and what's more, I realized that God really loves me. As I listened to this delightful story, my doubts disappeared, my heart opened, and I began to feel and flow with him. Since that splendid moment, my life has been a miracle after miracle. I wake up in the morning and I look forward to each new day. I have many wonderful friends and my work is satisfying. I just love life. And I'm so grateful that God is so good to me." He put his hand on my shoulder, looked me squarely in the eye, and told me, I just want you to know that I love you and to say, God bless you. With that, my mysterious friend turned and walked, or really floated, on down the street. No sermons, no meetings, nothing asked in return, just filling up and spilling over. Spiritual awakening is spread by overflow. I'm going to say that sentence again. Spiritual awakening is spread by overflow. We cannot force another into higher consciousness. We are like flower buds. We must open and bloom at our own rate, catalyzed by the warmth of the sun. The best way to support another person in their growth is to love them. They will feel so free and easy in our presence that their blocks to growth will just melt away. Maybe not melt, but they'll slowly dissolve. No amount of preaching, teaching, or pressuring will speed up their evolution, and it may even retard it. We may share, offer ideas, and invite if we feel to do so, yet this reaching out must be offered lightly with an open hand so that our friends feel completely free to accept our invitation or decline it. I've spoken to you about evangelism for a little while now. That's evangelism, right? Overflowing in love. Overflowing in love. You've got tips here. Take with you, keep it in your wallet. You know, if you find yourself like, oh, I cannot believe she just said that to me. Whip the card out and go, right? And go. All right, and if you really still want to have that hammer in your toolbox, then you can use this affirmation from Charles Fillmore from Keep a True Lent, which says, I cultivate a loving attitude of mind toward everybody. As I pray and realize spiritual dominion, I feel the power of unity with the higher self more quickly than any other way. All right, so you've got a little hammer if you need it sometimes. So 2 weeks, we are starting radical renewal. We're starting learning how to communicate with each other with kindness, with love, with respect. Now, it's a 6-week process. I think you can commit to 6 weeks. It's not like an engagement. You know, you're just kind of dating us at that point. 6 weeks. So I'm looking forward to being filled up and overflowing in love when I come back and be with you on the 28th.